William, thank you for joining us here at the Yale Club in Manhattan.
My pleasure.
Why do you think Arterton has been so successful in such a short period of time?
Yeah, I think we've definitely made progress. To answer your question, I think it's a combination of different factors. So obviously, I think there is luck. I think that is important. Sometimes it's also about sort of investing in the right places, whether it's monetary, whether it's human resources, so on and so forth. I don't know how to say this without sounding self-grandizing, but a little bit of it is to do with me. I think it's not necessarily about competence or whatever. I think it's someone who's to be the driving force, and that's So I think I had a bit of that, and I think our team works well together. I think everyone specializes in their own little thing, and in the end, you sort of come together and you sort of build this house, and it works. But I think the driving force around it sometimes I think really helps, and that's probably what accounts for the speed. I think without the driving force, they would eventually get there, and so far as you're still making the right business decisions and so on and so forth. But I think the drive helps with the speed.
Can you talk about the importance of who you work with, who you hire, people you partner with in business, and the role of those choices in growth and success?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something I often think about. I don't think I have this nailed down. And I think a lot of this, that is seeking people to work with, whether they are colleagues, employees, business partners, suppliers, so on and so forth, a lot of it is luck. Right. Obviously you do your usual information gathering exercise, right? You find out as much information as you can, and then you make the best decision, right? So you make a decision based on best information, right? In science we have something that we call inference the best explanation. Sometimes it's fleshed out quite technically, but what it really means is, okay, given all that which one is the best hypothesis, right? And that's what I like to do, but I'm still convinced a lot of it is luck. To tell you the truth, I think I'm still learning, what's the best way to say hire someone or seek partners to work with. But obviously, I think there's some factors that you look for. I personally believe in looking for potential. So listen, if you're young, you don't have the skill set, as long as you have potential to have the skill, right? And you try to develop it out of people, right? And that's really hard.
How so?
Yeah. So everyone's different. So let me try it this way. It is really hard, but you still have to do it. Now, why is it hard? Everyone's different. I think sort of getting someone from, let's say we're focused on the endpoint, call it B. And B is, they're developing themselves quite well. They're creating new skills. They're developing new capacities, getting a bit of experience, a bit of confidence. How do you get them to B? Well, everyone's starting off in a different position, right? And you kind of want them to sort of converge to B. So you're going to have a different sort of recipe, a different sort of formula for every individual person. One thing that I like to do is this, and I don't know if these guys are going to laugh, but I always ask, look, the row is 40%, this task, 40% this task, and it doesn't add up to 100% because there's 20% left. 20% is up to you. What would you like to do, right? And the thing is, what you would like to do may be something that you're good at already, and you just want to do it. You want to exercise those capacities. It could be because you are not good at it, and you want to get better at it. That's also fine. Sometimes it's at the expense of that task, right? But certainly it is something that one can do. And sometimes it's something that they're not quite good at yet, and they want to get good at it. That's also fine, yeah.
The term Desiderata is cited on Arterton's website as a tenet of its vision. Can you speak more to the meaning of this word?
Yeah. So it's a Latin term meaning things to be desired. So, I mean, I thought about this for some time, but what sort of unites the different Arterton products? Because as you know, Chris, we do several different brands. There's some commonality between some of these products, but the unifying commonality is, look, they're all high end and they're all really, really nice things to have. whatever they might be. And I don't know if there's going to be more products to come in the future, but whatever they are going to be, I think they're going to be things to be desired. And so Desiderata means things to be desired.
Desiderata.
That's right. I think I'm pronouncing it right. I mean, but here's the thing with Latin, it's, people, from what I know, people disagree about how it's actually meant to be pronounced.
Interesting.
I mean, people don't speak Latin day to day anymore. So, yeah. I did fail my Latin class, actually.
So we can't trust your
undergrad.
pronunciation. In that same interview, the second word you used was discernment, which I think is so interesting. We've spoken privately about how, as a proprietor, you have to make critical choices about what you do and don't carry in the limited inventory that you have, in a way that's not entirely dissimilar to the curator of a museum. Can you speak more to this idea of retailing products as a form of curation? And how do you think about the composition of what Arterton carries?
Right. Yeah, I mean, look, with anything, you're going to have some similarities and differences. And so the analogy you're drawing is to a museum curator. I think we are curating something. And that this is literally, an extension of my previous answer, which is we're choosing products that are high end and things to be desired. So we're sort of creating along that dimension. But, the thing about the museum is, generally you can't go into a museum, you can't really buy things, right? You can't have things made for you. So there are some similarities in that, look, we're going to pick some fine things, but some of the differences is, look, you can actually come to Arterton and try some of these things for yourself. So yeah, I like the museum analogy, but there are some differences. So what made you think of, okay, so first of all, I don't know how this interview works. Can I ask you questions as well?
Yeah, please.
So what made you think of the museum analogy?
Because to me, I think it's so interesting. I was watching a video on kind of just the luxury industry and luxury products in general. It's by a YouTube channel. I want to say How Design Works. It's a really well done video. And the presenter kind of talked about like different facets of luxury products that are thematically similar across companies that consider themselves luxurious. And one of the comparisons he makes is a company like Louis Vuitton, for example, versus, Macy's. And you go into a store like that, and there's a distinct design to the interior and the showcasing of items in luxury stores that is very museum-like. Right, whereas you go into Macy's and products,
Don't touch.
yeah. In a Macy's, it's like products are just crowded together, almost like a flea market-esque aesthetic. And so that's something that I think about when I see even just images of the Prince's Arcade, for example, I think Arterton has a very similar way of presenting objects in a way that is sacred.
Yeah. I don't know if we intentionally did that though. So here's the thing. Let me tell you this. We always say at Arterton, at the Prince's Arcade, it's a showroom, not a shop. Right? And I think that's because of the certain products that we do. If you're there to look at shoes, what we try to do is give you good service, fit you, maybe answer your question and see what you're actually looking for, rather than say, hey, look, come, look, it's not like a flea market, come buy, we don't really say that. Similarly, I think we get a lot of private clients as well, and if they're doing hangers, garment bags, and they're purchasing for their homes, it's not sort of a kind of thing that you go to a shop and say, what, 20 of these or whatever. You kind of sit down, you go to our lounge, have a bit of a coffee, have a chat, and we try to understand your needs a bit more. Because look, everyone's going to be different. Everyone's going to want different things, and part of sort of buying the right thing is buying the right thing for you, right? So there's these hangers, you can customize it all sorts of ways. I mean, we had all sorts of different requests, and we try to honor them, right? So I enjoy it, it's fun. I try to be at the showroom as much as I can, actually.
How do you think that, you kind of touch on like personalized buying experiences, and that's like part of what Arterton offers. It's not just going in and buying something, you're like having this experience. Like, how do you think that process is evolving as things are being more digitized?
how do I see the retail
Yeah.
evolving? Yeah, so I think, of course, e-commerce has drastically changed the retail landscape in different ways. For us, I'm not sure it's changed the service that we offer. I think in general, we want to offer a high level of service. I mean, here's the thing, I'm speaking only for my company, right? I think every company is different. Other companies might be slightly different. I mean, with us, people want to see, sometimes they want to see the product in person. They might ask questions. Of course, if you're doing a fitting, we try to offer as much advice online or via emails. We might ask for things to be sent to us, like photographs, measurements, so on and so forth. Actually, you had the same experience. Anyhow,
I sent you a video of my foot. Yeah.
yes. Actually, I think it was done at a store, wasn't it? So
No, it was actually my apartment. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Going back to what I was going on there. So I don't know if it's changed anything. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe we should be evolving. But hey, man, it's I don't think it's rocket science. We want to provide good service. It's not always easy. I mean, the aims, like a lot of things, the aims are pretty straightforward. You know what to do, but it's not always easy doing it, right? Sure. And then it's not always easy doing it consistently. Like, I can start a diet today, but the thing is, am I going to continue it next week, right? So it's that sort of thing. So we try to just do the best we can with the level of service we offer. We try to make it a bit more personalized. I think clients appreciate it, and I've seen it with my own two eyes. If, say, a showroom assistant, Nina, or somebody else recognizes a client and recognizes them by their name, I think they appreciate it. They feel special. And in some cases, it's a bit instrumental as well, because we remember who you are, remember what you like. So, hey, we already got your size out. We already got the colors out. It's kind of cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can I tell you something? So one time,
Please,
I still don't know how they did this. I really don't know how they did this. Actually, I told Izzy about this, but I was in Singapore, and I think I was just like an Uber or Black Lane or something, and I was checking into the Ritz-Carlton, Singapore. When I got out the car, they addressed me by my name. And I was like,
interesting.
Hold on. I didn't tell you when I was arriving. How did you know my name? And, this is a big hotel. It's not like a boutique hotel with like 12 rooms, right? And then you're the only one who hasn't checked in. So somehow they knew my name. And I didn't give it to the driver. Whatever. I might have given it to the driver, but the driver wouldn't have given it to the hotel. So I'm like really stunned, like, wow, this is luxury service, right? They took my bag. I didn't have to think about it. I checked in, got to the room, bags were already there. I don't know how they beat me, but like, damn, like, I want to do that, It's very cool. So
it's a special feeling.
I was impressed. So that was the feeling that I thought. And like, I was like, hey, you guys got your stuff together. Yeah. They instilled confidence.
Right. Many of the products vended by Arterton blur the line between art and function.
Yes.
Right. So Nakata Wajima hangers, Yuhaku leather goods, I think are both great examples.
Right.
Could you share your thoughts on what it means for an object to be functional, what it means for an object to be artistic, and how you think about that in your curation, and maybe just how you think about that in general?
Yeah. Good question. So first off, the Wajima hangers, I don't know if everyone knows this, but these are Nakata hangers that have been hand-carved from a single block of wood. They're retail for £1,400 each. And one of the reasons for the high price is the high cost production. And then one of the reasons for high cost production is these things are painted by hand. So if you look, I don't know if you're going to show a picture of it, but if you look at the face of the hanger, sometimes we've got quite elegant designs on the face. Some of these pay homage to some Japanese themes. We've done a few for a few heads of state, a few business leaders, so on and so forth. And we're talking about £1,400 hanger here, right? So, well, what's the function of that? Well, there is some function because, look, it's shaped optimally to support your suits, but there's also an aesthetic value, and that probably speaks to the art value. They're nice to look at. You can appreciate someone's craftsmanship. So function versus form. Yeah, I think it serves a function. I think sometimes the function is the form, right? How it looks, right? You think you get this with shoes as well. So obviously shoes have to be comfortable. They've got to perform that function. They also got to protect your feet, right? You know, you're not walking in New York City in concrete, right? Barefoot. So sometimes they're blurred, I think. I mean, that's my take, but I don't know. Maybe there's a branch of philosophy called philosophy of aesthetics, and I'm sure there are probably some going theories on this, right?
The form of function, the art of function. You know, what I think about so often, what I always come back to is the Knix boot. Are you familiar with that company, Knix Handmade Boot?
I can't say that I am.
American company. They make boots, and they're known as like the boot maker that makes the most durable, like well-constructed, tightly constructed boot that you can get, like maybe in the world, but certainly in America. And you know, they're like close to $1,000, right? And these are not made in the same way like dress shoes are, where there's like aesthetic considerations. I mean, there is in some sense, but they are beautiful objects simply because they are executed strictly for function, but executed in a way that is so perfect that there is a beauty, I think, that comes out simply from the result of pursuing function in that way, which I think is kind of interesting, and maybe speaks a little bit to like Nakata, where they're making the perfect functional, aside from, you know, the painting on it, they're making the perfect functional hanger, but in so doing, they're creating a beautiful sculptural object.
Yeah. Yes.
I want to switch gears a little bit here. Before I do so, I want to say that you were correct. It actually was in a store. I'm remembering now that I measured my foot to set
Okay,
those
all
views to
right.
you. Yeah. Oh, an Edmund store.
Yeah, they're probably like three guys looking at you.
Yeah, like what is going on? Here in America, made in China is often considered an indication of poor quality and unethical labor. Do you think the Chinese market is underestimated, if not misunderstood, by Western consumers, and in what ways?
I think it depends very much on the manufacturer. I think sometimes yes. I think historically, I mean, this is just part and parcel of China's economic model. I mean, since 1978, right, since they've opened up their economy, they really relied on producing goods cheaply and fast, and they were very good at that, right? But here's the thing that you have to remember, and sometimes I feel like people have forgotten, right? Once upon a time, made in Italy, which is now synonymous with high quality, and made in Japan, which is also synonymous with high quality, was once considered, you know, not a great country to have things made in, right? I think there was a line Back to the Future, which I always, you know, remembered. I think Doc said something like, "Oh, well, like this is made in Japan. It's junk." Now, of course, by the time the 1980s,
Interesting.
you know, came by, made in Japan was great, right? So I think we're seeing something similar with made in China, but it's very dependent on the manufacturer, because if you're manufacturing goods that do well if they're made cheaply, right? If the things are, you know, you're throwing away using, you know, one time or two times or three times, you know, some consumable thing, then maybe you ought to make it cheaply. Maybe it's, you know, injection molded plastic, you know, you can buy them really, really cheap. But if you're making high-end goods, I think you're now confronted with a very difficult perception of made in China being crap. Sometimes it is crap, okay, even if it's priced highly, but sometimes it isn't. And in the cases where it isn't crap, it's usually artisanal workshops. So you've got to remember, and you know Tim, but his brand, Yuan Shoemaker, are making exceptional shoes, and they're offering incredible value, right? Are they crap? No. Are they made in China? Yes. You know, oh shit, we just dispelled the paradox there. But here's the thing. Value is offered because these shoes are hand melted. They're therefore labor intensive goods. It turns out that the cost of labor can be cheaper in China, and hence value is now passed on. What are the conditions like? Well, it's an artisanal workshop. The conditions are great. Everyone's a skilled artisan. Some of these guys have been doing it for 20, 30 years. Everyone's like a family. So it's certainly a misconception that every manufacturer in China makes crap goods. Some do, right? In the future, we're going to see less of that. I think we'll see less of that. I still think we'll see some of it, but crap goods isn't something that is, I think, necessarily bad per se. It depends on a host of other factors, because in the end, if we want something cheap, right? If I just want, a pen that I use twice and then throw away, right? Then yeah, man, I would buy a cheaper pen, right? So yeah, this is an interesting question. It's a bit economical, it's a bit sociological rather. So yeah, I think we'll see some more new things out of China soon.
I think that's so interesting. I did not know that Japan was known in the past for had a reputation for low quality goods. What do you think caused that shift? I mean, certainly in perception, it's because they started making high quality goods. But like, what do you think caused that shift within Japan?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not an economist, right? I mean, I think about these things. I'm quite interested in these things. I do have somewhat of an academic background. My educated guess is time. I mean, with time, they just got better at doing things. You have to remember they came out of World War II having lost a war, having lost a lot of things, right? Not just the war. And so they wanted to revitalize the economy. I think they did really well. And then, the 80s came along, the 90s came along, and, you get a bit of that, but which a developed economy doesn't if you don't have that many natural resources to sort of exploit. And then there are other geopolitical things going on. But I'm going to give you an example. And it might make you a bit less surprised about this. American cars, all right, are great. Okay, relative to the time, right? American cars in the 50s, 60s, 70s were great. Japanese cars were seen as these small little things, right? They were really cheap. Like Honda Toyota, they're really, really cheap. They were like a quarter, like maybe a fifth of like an American car, but they did almost the same thing. But the reason why they're cheap is obviously they found ways to have economies of scale, right? And that's how the whole just-in-time Kaizen stuff came along, which actually people don't really like to employ in their warehouses and factories now post-COVID. But they had several techniques to sort of lower the cost. So economies of scale, Kaizen, just-in-time, one of them. But the other one is Kaizen, I think, is a Japanese term meaning something close to just-in-time. But from what this back in, when I still did some economics, I think just-in-time had a slightly different connotation from Kaizen. I think Kaizen is something like always improving or something. Anyhow, they design the products to be made cheaply in a way because they're trying to compete with other manufacturers, right? So it worked out and they got a bit more market share, they got a bit more leverage, and once you've got that, you can then think about doing all sorts of things. So you can make a cheap Toyota, you can make a high-end Toyota, right? Until this day, and you know what Lexus is, right? So it's the high premium version of Toyota. I saw a few of these outside in New York today. But in Japan, funnily enough, they don't really market Lexus as Lexus. They market Lexus cars as Toyota cars. But
interesting.
They're clearly high end. You can kind of see by looking at it and so on and so forth. So, obviously you diversify, you make nicer stuff, and then, look, you've got tech, you've got IP, you've got infrastructure. Don't forget. I mean, that's, I think India struggles that a little bit.
Infrastructure.
Yeah. So, I mean, even Italy, once upon a time, similar.
Interesting. What are some of the challenges of running a business that both sources from and serves to an international market?
Okay, here's one. And it's something that I've come across a few times when dealing with Japanese companies. Sometimes the products can be better suited to one market, and it takes a bit of adaptation to a different market. In my case, it's usually, although not necessarily, it's usually bringing an Eastern product, a Japanese product, into the West. So we had something from Yuhaku, which is a very, very, very fine maker of luxury leather goods. In Japan, they still use a lot of coins, okay? There's a vending machine here, there's a vending machine there, so you use coins, right? I don't know why they do that, but they like coins. I mean, vending machines, you can use a card as well, but they seem to like coins. So they have a coin pouch in their wallets, right? Now, in the UK where I'm living, now, or spending much of my time rather, we don't really use coins that much, so we don't really need it, right? And I think it's the same in the US, right? So we got rid of that coin pouch and we added extra card slots, okay? Sometimes, that was easy to do. Sometimes it's a lot harder because sometimes you can't just remove one thing and put another thing in. The whole thing can fall apart. And sometimes you get a bit of pushback, right? You're like, oh, well, we've been doing this way for, 80 years. Like, I don't want to change anything, William, right? And then you're going to be like, well, here's the situation. Here's why I think we should change it. Here's the reasons X, Y, Z. And you just hope, and most do, but they consider the reasons rationally, objectively, and you arrive at the same conclusion.
Interesting. Who are some of your greatest inspirations?
Ooh, I haven't thought about this one. I don't know. Listen, I'm sure for everyone it changes all the time in different periods of, your life. Heck, mine changes like from morning to night. So, I don't know. I think there's certainly people who I admire. I think there are people who I know. Like you meet personally, and you're like, hey, actually, maybe I can learn a thing or two from this person, or maybe you see sort of things that they have gotten right that I myself haven't got right or could do better. I'm like, hey, maybe I should be a bit more patient, or maybe I should, control my temper or something like that, right? So, yeah, I think sometimes you just look to people around you and you just sort of try to emulate the good parts, and you try to be understanding of the bad parts and make sure you don't do it yourself. It's not always easy.
What is your long-term vision for Arterton? What do you hope for in the future?
Yeah, this is a good one. I think we as a team we progressed quite a bit. I think we would like to do a few more specialist products and make certain brands, certain makes a bit more accessible in the UK and in the Western world.
William, thank you for joining us.
No worries. Okay.
I think that's great. Perfect. Yeah, I think that was a nice wrap up.
Yeah.
I'm glad we did that. I think that was I think that was a great highlight. I actually wish I should have had more questions about leadership and about.
Yeah, but I don't have these answers. Like, I feel like a dumbass, Like,
you do feel like a dumbass. You're not. You're the one of the smartest people on the fucking planet right now. My God. You're brilliant. I think that was a great conversation, and I think people would love to hear your unfiltered opinion on these things, because you don't have to think you're smart. It's in the proof is in your work.
Yeah, I've met much smarter people than I.
Great. Well, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, William. I'm in shot.
Your chair slightly shifted. No, just kidding.